Welcome, everybody. We're back recording because I screwed up. Anyway, so the polling questions. Here we go. So I want to know, are you a patient or a caregiver or a professional? Okay. So 71% of us are patients and we have 29% share professionals, which is cool. Next question. Have you discussed cancer with your children? Okay, I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to share the results. So 83% of us have, 17% of us have not. And I got one last question. What are the ages of your children? Wait a couple of seconds there and share. Yeah, it's going to be scattered across the board, but under 3 is only 8%, 3 to 5 is 23%, 5 to 8 is 15%, 9 to 12 is 15%, 12 to 15, 31%, 8% are in high school, 8% are in college. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Summer.
Maybe. Hi, everybody. Thank you again for coming tonight. It is so nice to be back. It was great to meet many of you at the summit, and welcome to new friends, whether ALK positive or EGFR. Thank you. We are so looking forward to being here. This has been a topic that when we've surveyed in the past, or even just looked on in our support group, talking to the children in our lives, whatever age they may be, always weighs heavy on all of us. So we were so excited to have this opportunity to talk with the Pickles Group. You may have heard about it in the past. ALKtALK, who was an ALK positive advocate member that worked tirelessly for all of us, was a founding family member with her husband, Jeff. And we have Jeff here tonight to kick off the Pickles Group. So thank you so much, Jeff, for all that you've done for us and for joining us tonight.
Thanks very much. I'm not a great speaker, so I've kind of written down an introduction to Pickles, and I apologize for reading. Many of you know me, and even more of you know my wife, Erica. She was diagnosed stage 4 ALK-positive lung cancer in September of 2017. And while she was laying in the hospital bed, she asked the doctor the prognosis, and her response was, well, the average is 1 year, but, and that was all that Erica heard. As the doctor explained the breakthroughs that have been made, all that she could think about was her 2 young kids, Francesca, who was 9 at the time, and Antonio, who was 7. Now, Erica would tell you through all the thoughts of how unfair this was, how much life she still had yet to live. The first thought was, how do I tell my kids? In 2018, we attended our first Longevity Hope Summit, and that's where we met so many of our lung cancer friends, found this ALK community, as well as our local Chicago community of the lung cancer ladies. We attended a rally on Capitol Hill, and when we were able to wrap our heads around the funding shortfalls for lung cancer research, Erica went from despondent to pissed off. For those of you who knew her, that's not hard to picture. She began to dedicate herself to advocacy, eventually founding two nonprofits, joining the board here at ALK Positive, and sitting on many industry panels. The first nonprofit was Yeah Best Life, an entity to raise funds for lung cancer research, and shared with organizations like ALK Positive, LCRF, and individual research projects. You've probably seen Erica's shirts and messages encouraging everyone to live their best life. The other nonprofit is why we're here today. We had a neighbor down the block, a really amazing guy, professor at Northwestern, leader of his field, and a father of 4 who'd been diagnosed with glioblastoma, a form of brain cancer. This is about a year after Erica's diagnosis. Ned and his wife, Erin, looked to us for help on how to pick up the pieces after a diagnosis. We looked to them for Ned's voracious research on treatments, diets, healthcare, and so many other things. Ned had a friend who was diagnosed with the same type of cancer. And that friend, Mark, who was a CEO of pizza chain Lou Malnati's, which is the best deep dish in the world, according to me, and also a father of 4, lived in the next town over. It was Mark and his wife, Carolyn, whose daughter lamented to her parents that it was difficult relating to other children. She told them, "I just wish that I had more people who understood me." Sorry. They looked for a support group for their kids and were shocked with the lack of offerings. Lots of support for patients and caregivers, nothing for kids. Not being the type of people to let something like that go unchecked, they reached out to Ned and Erin, asking if they knew anyone else going through the same journey. That's how we came in, and the 3 families had the first meeting that would eventually become Pickles. That first meeting was facilitated by a child life specialist who'd been working with some of our kids. And while the kids met, we chatted in the next room over Malnati's pizza, the best in the world, commiserated on our collective situation, kids experiencing one of the worst things in the world with no one to relate to. When we rejoined our children, their joy and meeting others like them made it obvious that this was something that needed to be continued and needed to be shared. So from then on, while the kids met, we planned, and that's how Pickles was born. So that child life specialist, Kelsey Mora, is here tonight. She was the obvious choice to design our programming, lead the therapeutic direction of the organization. We were lucky that she agreed to join us as our chief clinical program officer. She's joined by Cassie Horton, our executive director, who's helping us achieve our goal of offering this experience to as many kids as possible. Ned passed away days before the launch of Pickles, and we lost Erica this past April. Sorry. During that time, my kids leaned on their friends from Pickles. I would have loved to have had Pickles when she was diagnosed, and having the tools to answer her question from those first days. How do I tell my kids? That's our topic for tonight, how to talk to your kids about cancer. And so I'll let the experts get started, and thanks so much for having us. Turn it over to Kelsey.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Thank you so much to Mark and Summer and Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, for your courage and sharing your story and Erica's legacy for sure. Just so grateful and honored to be part of Pickles Group and to be joining with all of you tonight, those that are here now and those who will be watching this later. As Jeff alluded, I am a child life specialist. I'm also a licensed clinical professional counselor here in Illinois. And so I've really built my whole career around helping kids and teenagers from the littlest to the oldest navigating illness and grief related challenges. And so I have experience in the hospital setting, private practice, and now I'm working with Pickles Group as well. And so I'm here to provide some tips, some suggestions about how to talk to kids about cancer. I see that 83% of you have already started these conversations, which is amazing. Kudos to all of you. This is not easy. It's difficult. And I used to call this talk delivering difficult news to future adults because it's not easy. It's difficult. And we want to simplify it a little bit to make it just a little bit more tangible on top of everything else that you are likely navigating. And the reason I talk about thinking about future adults is because often I think we are making these decisions about who our kids are right now. And we heard from Jeff that his kids were, I think he said 7 and 9 at the time, and they're now teenagers. And so really thinking about what a kid might need, not only in these moments, but in their future as they grow and evolve and navigate the illness alongside parents and caregivers is really important. In terms of the agenda of what I'm going to go over, I'll definitely tell a little bit more about what Pickles Group is and what we do. Developmental responses, we saw that there's quite a range from age here of parenting. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how that might look different for different age groups. We at Pickles Group offer a support kit that we provide schools, faith-based organizations, hospitals, clinics. It can be received at the time of a diagnosis or at the time of treatment initiation. And inside really is kind of a first step at how to talk to kids. And so I'm really going to break that down tonight. What is found in the support kit, I'm going to give a closer look at how to do this kind of in this format of talking through it. But there's some other things in that support kit in terms of a supportive activity and also just how to connect with Pickles Group. So that's something we've rolled out thousands already in our first year as an organization, and it's definitely something that all of you are welcome to request or tell your friends, your fellow patients or organizations and networks that you're part of as well. And then the Pickles Way, again, that really gets at trying to simplify something that's not simple. And so we at Pickles Group really feel strongly about trying to break things down into like the form of 3, because I think after 3, it's really hard to remember and recall and take away so much information. So hopefully that technique can be helpful for you as well. Okay, so a little bit more about Pickles Group. So as Jeff stated, this was started by 3 amazing families and has evolved to what it is now with the help and the vision of Cassie and the families. I have been privileged to be helping design kind of what was started with these founding families into something that is can be succeeded with families all over the globe. And we're starting to see that impact now. So our evidence-based solution for kids facing parental cancer is really rooted in 3 main pillars. Honest, age-appropriate information. So helping kids know how to talk about this hard thing and how to understand it better. Coping skills. So at all of our groups, we provide a lot of strategies, techniques through play, art, game-based interventions so that they can walk away with some tangible skills to work through their feelings and experiences. And then the last one is connection to peers. And so Pickles Group gets its name from the kids who started it, and it's group because really it's about bringing these kids in a group format, a group setting, so that they can relate to one another. Here, in response to what Jeff shared, Molly's question about like, I want to meet other kids who get this. And so that's a really big piece of Pickles Group, is that they're just in community together with kids who have a similar experience, recognizing that all experiences are quite different. For the purposes of today, I'm going to really hone in on this honest, age-appropriate information. But by the end of the talk, we'll make sure that you're aware of all that we have going on at Pickles Group, so that if your children or your friends or family members' children would be a good fit for our programming, that they know kind of how to get involved. And we have a really unique opportunity right now to join our first ever national virtual cohort. We just had a week 1 today, right before this call, but we're doing a second week 1 so that if any of your families or families you know are interested, that you can still join us and not have to wait for the spring cohort. Okay, so speaking about developmental responses, so while Pickles Group really kind of hones in on the 1st through 12th grade age span, it's really important that I take time to address some of the younger kids, knowing that there may be people in the room who have kids in these age ranges, but also there are families that may have kids in multiple age ranges. And so we do a couple family-friendly events a year where we invite and include the entire family or household. And so we have had some really little kids at that. But for the purposes of our groups, the content and material is really designed for school-aged kids who have a little bit more cognition, comprehension, and abilities to participate in some of these types of activities. But certainly infants and toddlers pick up on just changes in their environment, right? They're aware of the people around them, their caregivers acting different, right? Whether that's stress, projected anxiety, worry, fear, tearfulness, not feeling your best, having lower energy. Even our littlest ones can notice those changes because there's something different in their environment and the people that they look to for comfort. And so really kids at this age, when we move up to preschool, we're not born knowing to worry about things, right? We're born to look around to our adults and see how are they responding to this and how should I respond? And so that's why it's so important to demonstrate that at an early age. And when I say that, it doesn't mean acting like everything's okay, because it's not okay, right? Dealing with cancer is not okay. And so being able to model that for even the youngest children, that this is really hard, this is really scary, and we're going to get through this together, and we're here. I'm crying because I don't feel good, or I'm crying because I'm worried, is really natural. And it actually can set kids up for a lot of success facing future hard things in their life, to know that even though as parents, we're like, we want our kids to be happy all the time, it's not realistic, unfortunately. And so being able to help kids know how to deal with when they don't feel happy can be really helpful. And then the school age and the adolescents, they start to understand a little bit more, but they might have some misinformation. And so it's really important that as caregivers and a trusted adults, we can help create that narrative together with them so that they know on how to talk about it, because sometimes not talking about it can actually create bigger fear and scarier outcomes and stories. And so being able to really break that down, and then ultimately just creating an open door. So I'll get to this, but kids, this is not a one and done conversation. It is building blocks of conversations. And so know that like what I'm talking about today, because like I said, I used to call it delivering difficult news because it's not specific to cancer. It is a kind of a pathway to help kids through all kinds of hard things. And knowing that illness comes with so many ups and downs, it's basically a framework for you to apply to those ups and downs. So, and when you've started the conversations early, you're able to then go back and build on those conversations rather than feeling that each turning point, whether good, bad, or otherwise, has to be a really big conversation. So they really build on each other. And then adolescents, I think really important. I saw there were some high school, college, even maybe young adults. They may be thinking a lot more about big picture. And so just building that trust that they can come back and ask questions and get their questions from the source rather than trying to research or figure things out on their own can just be a lot safer. But it also helps if they're struggling with roles. Often the older kids might feel this sense of needing to take on more parenting roles or responsibilities. And so it allows us to really prioritize what's most important to them. Okay, so a closer look at those 3 guiding tips that I mentioned. And so they're called 3 different things, but I'm going to break them down even further. So the first is honesty really is the best policy. So that gets at just the words that we use and how we create those narratives and stories about what our family is going through. When in doubt, keep things normal. And I put that in quotes because there's nothing normal about going through this. And I don't want to minimize this because I know many of you who indicated yourselves as patients never expected to find yourself in this situation. So it's not normal, but I'll get at kind of how do we make it a normal experience for our family. And then expressing feelings is healthy. And so that really gets at how do we express those feelings. And that's a big part of Pickles Group. So the first, honesty really is the best policy. And so the setting the stage is really about like the where, the when, and then the warning. So I kind of talk about the W's, right? When you're sending out an invitation, you've got your like what, where, when. The same is true for this kind of setting the stage. Where should we be doing this conversation? When should we be having it? What should we be saying? And so timing is really ambiguous. I will say for those of you who indicated that you haven't discussed cancer with your children yet, it is okay. I have had parents that have come to me feeling a lot of guilt or worrying about having done it wrong or not having done it the way they should have, or and kids are amazing. I'm sure many of you can feel that in your own family structure. You are doing what you feel is best with the resources and the circumstance that you're in those moments. And so the idea is like to hopefully provide you with some takeaways for if and when this feels like the right approach for your family. But what I'll say is that I've worked with parents individually and talked a lot about sometimes it's a kid getting older and it's saying, wow, you're ready for more information. You're getting so much older. I think you're ready to handle more information. I really want to talk to you and explain things to you, right? Or, that like you as a caregiver are now in a place where you feel more ready to have these conversations. And so it's not about doing it wrong. It's about doing it in the right timing for you. But when we talk about where, I do recommend kind of a neutral location. So middle of the house, not maybe their bed, when not right before bedtime. And I always say that like, while we may try our best as caregivers and clinicians to kind of like set the stage for them, they won't reciprocate that for you. So know that if like you have this conversation and then they want to talk to you about it again, it will probably be before bed and it will probably be in the car when you're trying to rush to some sort of activity. And that's totally normal on their end. But if we as adults can try our best to do it at a time that makes the most sense for us and our kids, that can be really helpful. Making sure they're well rested, well fed, kind of in that best condition as possible. And then the warning is really important. You talk to your kids all the time about all kinds of different things. And so having an opportunity to say, I have something serious to talk about, or I have something sad to talk about, depending on the age range, that verbiage might look different, but it kind of tunes them in differently that, oh, whatever's coming might be different or hard to hear. When we talk about using real words, I'll kind of default to our support kit, and but we have child-friendly definitions in our support kit that are shared with caregivers and families, that kind of break down different terms, chemotherapy, cancer cells, side effects, radiation, etc. But what I really want to get at this is that using real words, at least the first time, can be really helpful because it's clear. It's not like euphemisms can just be a little bit more confusing if they have multiple definitions, where if you use one word that means that thing, it's not as confusing, it's not as ambiguous. And then I don't know is also a real answer. So if your kid asks you something and you don't know the answer, it's okay to say, wow, that's a great question. I don't know the answer yet, but I'm going to work on finding out, and I'll bring that information to you as soon as I have it. So I don't know is a real answer, and it's okay to have that answer. It may be, it may even be, I don't know, or I'm not ready to discuss that yet. I need some time, right? Like, especially with the older ones, that mutual respect of also like your own emotional journey can be really therapeutic for older kids. And then follow their lead. I've also had parents tell me, they went and played right away, or they wanted to go to their neighbor's house right away. Totally developmentally appropriate. And so know that they will like self-dose how much they can handle, and they'll probably let you know when they're done. But if they're asking more questions, that also might suggest that they're ready for more information. So we just follow their lead. We let them take it in the bite size if they need to. And no problem. It looks like we might be done with this conversation today, but I just want you to know that I'm here anytime that you want to come back and discuss it further. So next is that when in doubt, keep things normal. So how do we keep things normal? Really helping them anticipate change. What will be different? What can I expect? Kids are also very egocentric, so they're really seeing the world through their viewpoint. And so like, how is this going to affect me, right? I've had kids ask me, oh, you have to go to the doctor. Okay, but am I going to be late for soccer, right? Sounds a little selfish, but really age appropriate, because soccer is their world, and they want to know, am I going to be late? Are you going to be there to watch me, right? Totally appropriate. And so being able to communicate, I've got a doctor's appointment, I'm worried I might be running late, but I'll make sure the neighbor gets you home safely, right? Whatever might look different. When kids feel like things are really chaotic, they don't have a sense of control, stability, which I'm sure all of you can relate to, unfortunately, providing choices when possible can give them a lot of that sense of control. And this is true with even the littlest ones, right? Do you want the blue bowl or the red bowl? Breakfast is not a choice right now, but choosing what we eat it out of might be a choice, right? Or an older child. Homework's not a choice right now. Do you want to do it right now or in 10 minutes? Do you want to do it at the desk or at the dinner table? So breaking down choices, and I recommend giving 2 favorable choices for yourself, right? And so we don't want to put choices out there that we're not okay with. So 2 choices. I've got a red and blue bowl, so we're good there. I'm not going to create another issue, but I'm giving my kid a choice in a matter that feels really unsettling to them in the big picture. And then last but not least, keeping things consistent. This can be a hard one when families are going through hard things. I think it's not uncommon to kind of want to lean on nurture, right, for your kiddos. And so, ice cream, right? All those things are totally good and nurturing. What I would suggest is trying to provide structure, routine, and predictability as much as possible through even rules, right? And so if there are chores, if there's homework, if there's things that you do, trying to maintain those, recognizing that when a diagnosis comes, like we're scared and we are told things that are really hard to digest, and we're always hoping for a longer lifespan, for a recovery, for a cure, as we all should be, and as all of the great organizations on the call are working toward. And so we want to maintain a life that we hope that when we're not facing cancer anymore, it's consistent, right? We're not like, oh no, we've been staying up till midnight, we haven't been doing our homework, we haven't been doing our chores, and now everything's back to normal and we have to do those things again. That can be a lot harder. And so kids actually thrive when things are consistent, when there's structure, when they know what's expected of them. And so it gives them purpose and it gives them stability. And so that's kind of how we keep things normal when things aren't normal, right? So trying to create some stability and a sense of control. And then the last pillar is expressing feelings is healthy. And so I said this earlier, but this is really a unique opportunity to model for your children your own feelings, how to feel them, how to express them, how to deal with them, the good ones and the uncomfortable ones. And so a really good way to do this can be using but it's a common term, I messages. So I feel blank because blank and, right? And so the and is the reassurance or the plan. I feel sad because Dad's in the hospital and I was thinking we could all make a card for him, right? Or I feel tired today because of my medicine and I wish I could play with you, but can we find something else that we can do together that's easier for my body today, right? So how you feel, why you feel that way, and then kind of what we can do about it. So great opportunity to model for your kids that those feelings are normal and there's ways to deal with them. It might even be how you're coping, right? So I'm feeling really sad. I need some space and I'm working with someone who's helping me feel better, right? Or I'm going to have you go to the neighbors for a little bit so that you can still have a lot of fun and I can take care of myself, right? And so modeling that it's okay to feel those things and do something about it can be really empowering for your children. The 4 C's are kind of common things that kids are thinking about. And so a lot of times, so the picture you see on the screen is actually an activity that we do at Pickles Group. It's called Phone a Pickles Friend. And the kids submit questions and I provide responses. And my responses are kind of generalized, broad, inclusive, and ultimately encouraging kids to go home and talk to their trusted adults about these things as well. But we do see a lot of the same questions, which is common in cancer care. So kids are often wondering, can I catch it? And I think that that's even more prevalent with everything with COVID and being able to really talk through kids that this is a different type of illness, that it's not caused by germs, it's not shared by germs, it doesn't happen to everyone. And that brings me to the next question of, did I cause it? We don't know why it happened, right? I wish it didn't, but nothing that mom did or you did caused this. Those 2 questions have really honest answers. And that's why using the word cancer can sometimes be helpful, because it's its own thing and it's distinguished from like a cold or a cough or COVID. But there's also a way to talk about cancer without using the word, just keeping in mind that we can't prevent them from hearing things from all kinds of other people. And so, I've had families that are like, I don't want to use this word, but then I'm like, okay, but we can't prevent, uncle or neighbor or nurse from using those words. And so that's totally a personal choice. But what I'll say is that it's really important that there's a way to break it down, but then also thinking about, as their most trusted adult, if I can control how and who they're hearing this information from, that might actually build trust, knowing that we can't prevent all the people that they're interacting with in the world from handling it the way that you'd like them to as caregivers. So different ways to approach that, but definitely distinguishing the illness as not contagious is a really good start, especially that's a really common worry for like the preschool age. Can I cure it? And so we have experts on the call you probably know a lot more about all that's going into research and working toward cures. I know that there's so much growth and development in the world of medicine, and certainly related to lung cancers. But what I'll say is, for kids, we talk about the doctors and nurses and the medical team are doing everything they can to make parent better. If there's changes, whether good or bad or different, we're going to tell you, right? And so a lot of times you're coming back and having a conversation that, mom had imaging or scans, and we've learned that we need to change medicines, right? The medicine that we're using is not helping to make the cancer smaller anymore. And so there's another cancer we can try. That might also mean having a conversation about there's no more medicines, right? And now we're switching our focus on getting rid of the cancer to making mom as comfortable as possible, right? And so at another talk that Pickles Group did on the same topic, there were a lot of questions about grief and loss and prognosis. And so again, having had early conversations makes it a little bit easier to have those subsequent conversations, because you can go back to, remember when I told you that I would tell you if there was ever a change? We're facing one of those times, right? Or remember when I would talk to you about because you see on the screen, a lot of kids ask, what if the medicine runs out? What if there's no more medicine? If it doesn't work, will there be another kind of treatment? They're often thinking about that. And so being able to go back and talk honestly about those changes in treatment can be really helpful. who will take care of me? This is a really important and big question that a lot of kids are thinking about, whether it's a single or dual parent household or guardianship circumstance, being able to actually tell them, we've thought really hard about this and we've got so many people that love you and support you. So we really know that there will be lots of people to take care of you. And I'm doing everything I can to live as long as possible, right? And that's true whether you're an ill parent or a well partner. We don't know when anyone's time, it ends. And so being able to communicate that, like, I'm doing everything I can to stay healthy as long as I can, whether that's during diagnosis or not. And I also will make sure that you're always well taken care of. And so those are kind of the big 4 C's that kids are often thinking about, and the way that you might consider responding to those questions. So the Pickles way, I talk a lot. And as a fellow parent, I can relate that, like, we always want to fix things for our kids and make it all better. I spoke to at the beginning, like, we want our kids to be happy, and yet we recognize that in life we don't always feel happy. And so really recognizing, I want to pull back and just say, kids sometimes just need support over solutions. We often want to fix things for them, but kids often aren't looking for a fix necessarily. And like, let's face it, there's not a fix or a solution for navigating cancer. It's hard and it's not what anyone wanted or expected. And so being able to just provide that support to kids rather than trying to fix things, especially when it feels like things aren't fixable. And so the way that I really recommend doing that is listening first. We can learn so much about what kids are thinking about and worrying about and wondering about when we just listen to what they have to say. Validate. So no matter what they say, being able to validate it. Wow, that's a really big question. I'm so glad you asked me that. Or especially if it's like, that's a great time to catch misconceptions, right? I told you that you were a horrible mom, and then we found this out. It's all my fault. Wow, I'm so glad you told me that, and that you've been thinking about that and worrying about that. That's not why this happened, and that's not the case, but I'm so glad you told me so that we could talk it through, right? So listening first, being able to validate what they're thinking about, that it is always okay, and then be able to reassure them, even if there's not a solution, just that's really hard, and I'm gonna be here with you through the hard. Listen, validate, reassure. And this is why I say, like, I don't know is a real answer. We don't always know. We don't always have answers. We don't always have quick solutions or fixes when navigating parent cancer, but we can support our kids, be present for them, help them feel seen and heard during a hard thing. I'm gonna pause. So Pickles Group is about a lot more than honest, age appropriate information, but that's just kind of what I honed in on. So I was worried about running out of time, so I think I talked kind of fast, but I definitely, that means that we have more time for questions, and I can always go back and kind of dig deeper into some of the topics as well. But before we do that, are there any questions right now that, okay, it looks like there's some love for Jeff, understandably so. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing any questions. Okay. I do want to, oh, go ahead. Yeah,
Kelsey, can I jump in for a second?
please.
With ALK positive and EGFR, we have a tendency to go longer on some of our medications. So I think some of us maybe would hold back if we had younger kids. Then we have a durable response for a while. It's like, and we don't look like we have cancer, we're not bald, we know the common things. So how would you address that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that gets back to the topic earlier around kind of timing, right? And so if you're in a situation where you feel like it's not necessary to talk to the kids because maybe the changes that they're seeing are not as prevalent, being able to say, like, when you have to or you need to have a conversation that looks different, it's not about like what we haven't told you, it's kind of the reasons we haven't, right? Like, there's been dad's been on medicine for a very long time. The medicine's been really helping dad, and there's been a change, and it's really important that we talk to you about it because we're facing this change, right? And so kind of like acknowledging the timing. You don't have to feel like you're withholding information or hiding information. There's also a way to talk about you may introduce the topic and then things are really steady for a long time, which would be great. And you don't actually have to like be revisiting the conversation all the time, right? You're taking the medicine, you're, feeling well, they're seeing you as active, nothing's changed in your caregiving patterns. And so it's just I've had kids that just tell me like, oh yeah, my dad takes medicine, right? Like, or my dad, needs that medicine to help his cells, or there's different ways to approach it. And that's kind of an individualized decision, but definitely it can be talked about without everything, because that's your situation. And then it still makes it a little bit easier to have a conversation if there were to be a medication change, because you can say, wow, we had this conversation a really long time ago, but remember how dad takes his medicine every morning? It's been really helping his body. And we learned from the doctors that we're ready to make a change on the medicine that might make dad feel differently. And so we wanted an opportunity to talk to you about that, because it will be more noticeable, or it will change the way that you're seeing him, right? So again, like, could have a conversation that is simplified based off of the current situation, still gives you something to build on, or your timing is the right timing for you. So then you're having a conversation that kind of just, it gives an overview of what things have been up to this point and then why you're having this conversation now. I've also had kids that are born after a diagnosis or are quite young. And so also being able to talk about, like I said, when they're getting older, you might start to use different words or explain things in more detail. And you can still build on whatever was said when they were younger. It just looks different as they're getting older. You're getting older, you're ready for more information. Or you might have a kid that just flat out asks you, why do you take that medicine every day? Or why do you have to go to the doctor so much? And then maybe you're like, oh, we're at an age, or we're at a level of curiosity where we're ready for more information. So again, you may be following their lead and find yourself in a situation where you're reading that they might be ready for a bigger conversation. And then of course you can say, wow, those are such great questions. I'm going to talk to, whoever I need to, whether that's a co-parent or a family member. And then I'd love to have this conversation soon, right? And then you might be following up with them after you've had a chance to digest that question you weren't expecting, and kind of plan for what that conversation can look like, because you do want to be prepared as best as possible.
Thanks. Do you see your chat question or?
Yes.
Yeah, we've got a question in the chat. Summer, do you want us to facilitate questions, or do you?
Yeah, whichever. And it also, if people would like, are comfortable with taking themselves off of mute and want to speak, or we could also take questions in the chat. Either way, we are recording, so if anyone is sensitive to that, but yeah, we can do it. However, this has been so helpful, and I love all of the age appropriate responses. I think are huge too, in helping us know how to read our kids, kind of. So let's see, do you have any tips for getting a teenage boy to open up with his feelings and concerns?
Hey, Kelsey, can you shut the shared screen down? Be easier. Thanks.
Let's see here. I know he worries because I've seen him write his thoughts to friends. Oh, but clams up when I address things.
Yeah, great question. I'm someone who volunteers to work with the teenage boys. I love it. So definitely can relate and commiserate with all the challenges and beauty that come with this age range. I would say that by acknowledging that you're there is actually the best thing that you can do. Not forcing a teenager to open up. It sounds kind of the opposite, but just say, I'm here if you have any questions, right? Remember that conversation we had a while ago? I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere, right? If and when you're ready. Because it actually builds trust with them to know that they're going to be there when I'm ready and they're waiting for me to be ready, can be really helpful. And then just having other outlets for general feelings. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about illness, but just that life can throw us all kinds of big feelings and challenges. And so something that I do that's really helpful is play a sport or exercise or listen to music, right? And so demonstrating coping skills. At a lot of our Pickles groups, we find that the kids, especially the teenagers, aren't sitting in there talking about cancer. They're talking about school and sports and friends. And so definitely very, very normal. So modeling the coping skills, keeping that open door policy, and then yeah, like and then when you're addressing things and they're clamming up, definitely just saying like, oh, it seemed like not pushing it. It seems like we're not ready for this conversation. I just wanted to remind you that I'm here when you are, can actually be really, really helpful. Just again, it's that trust building. So it's like, I'm going to be there when you need me. I'm going to be honest with you. And I'm going to give you a space to circle back to when you need it. So not probably as direct or helpful as you're looking for. Again, that's that solution to kind of be able to like get in there sooner. I know it's really hard, but I would say that by building that trust and that patience is actually probably what a teenage boy needs most.
Thank you.
Right. Any other questions, folks? You can either type in the chat or jump in and take yourself off mute if you just want to ask. Either way works well.
Hi, this is Brandy Bryant. I have a question. First of all, thank you all so much for this. I signed in a little bit late, but I was just last couple of weeks thinking that I was diagnosed 4 years ago and my youngest child was 3 years old. And I was just thinking that, oh my gosh, I don't think he really fully understands. I need to have a conversation with him about, what's going on with mommy, or just check in with him to see what he thinks about this whole cancer thing. It's like we just kind of talk about it around him, but I don't really know how he's processing it. So helpful, and thank you. But my question was also about just the Pickles Group in general, and I'm sorry I signed on late. I'm actually on vacation in Europe. It's 1:30 here or something. But just how does the interaction with the kids work? Is there an online community, or is it nationwide? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Randy, for joining us at the middle of the morning and from so far away, but also for sharing your own story of kind of the timing for you in this journey. Let me just share my screen again for a moment, because I had a slide on kind of the upcoming events. But we're in a really exciting time for Pickles Group. We have started so we're in like the North Shore of Illinois, Chicagoland area. And so that's where the Lovacheks and the other founding families have connected. And so we have a pretty robust site happening there, but we are in this really exciting expansion phase where we're now expanding to other areas of the Chicagoland area. And then we just launched our first ever national virtual cohort. So I was just on that call before this, and we are opening up a second week one this Sunday. So it'll be the 25th for any of your families who might want to join. But it's essentially a 5-session program where we start with basically like the kids getting connected, getting to know each other, having shared experiences. Then we do a little bit of learning about cancer and treatment. We talk about feelings, talk about coping skills, and then we close with a kind of hope and gratitude and community send off closing of the program. So that's our signature Empower program. We also do that in person with kids here in the Chicagoland area. We see a future of being in many different cities and states and maybe even countries. But I'll say right now, that's our way of supporting kids in other states is through this virtual community. So there is time to join, and that's for kids who are in 1st through 12th grade. And so we'll make sure that you have that information. But even though I design the programs and the curriculum, all of our programs are facilitated by volunteers. And so the volunteers are trained by me. They are screened by me. They all have experience working with children. We kind of run the gambit of retired professionals who are looking for other opportunities, and a lot of graduate students that are studying related fields. So a lot of experienced and energetic people, but it's not a support group. It's not therapy. It's really about me providing content and curriculum for them to then facilitate with kids. So they're basically just doing games, art, activities around these different themes. We start every group with kind of a check-in, and then we close with a checkout. So the checkout is a gratitude circle and like a cheer. And the check-in is kind of like just a how's everybody doing. Sometimes we'll call it like a sweet and sour, kind of a high and low. But sometimes it's just an icebreaker too.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. That's very helpful.
And we'll have all of the enrollment, like, so there's an enrollment forms right on the website. So you can enroll there, or you can email contact@picklesgroup.org, and it'll get to Cassie or I will make sure it gets to the right place. We're going to be on kind of a quick timeline with this virtual cohort. So if there is anyone that's interested, we ask that you try to enroll or email us as soon as possible, just so we can get kids enrolled, because we have like a packet that we mail to the home with the art supplies and the handouts and things like that.
Okay, thank you. And really quickly, well, I guess there'll be other cohorts, and I don't know if there's like a certain amount of attendance is required, because my kids have lots of activities, and I guess it's on the website. Never mind. I'm sorry. I'll look on the website. Thank you.
Yeah, no, totally fine. We will have many more cohorts. We're talking about an early 2023 cohort, and we do try to split up by age when possible. It just kind of depends on enrollment. So Cassie threw the website in the program calendar in the chat, it looks like.
Yeah, and shoot us an email. We can add y'all to, or if you put your emails in the chat, we can add you to the email list with upcoming opportunities. We're posting lots of updates, just like little tidbits, like how do I talk to my child's school about my cancer diagnosis, all that good stuff. So please just stay in touch with us. And, a little bit of it too, if you've got a couple other folks, like we would love to facilitate a cohort that is specific to folks with a certain cancer type, because then we're getting to go a layer deeper, even more similarity in terms of what the kids are experiencing. We just need to have enough folks who are interested. So, anything, if this group wants to get something going, we could even plan something specific for you in early 2023. We've talked a little bit about that with Mark, but there's room in our current offering if folks want to hop on it right now.
That is so awesome. And can you just let everybody know too, do you take insurance, or how is this paid for?
Great. Yeah, so our programs are entirely free. So free of charge, all the services, all the supports, the Pickles support kits are all free. Delaney, great question. I am Canadian, but we do not provide services in Canada just yet. But except for the virtual program. If you have kiddos that can hop on Zoom, we're kind of borderless in terms of the virtual program, but we do not have in-person services yet in Canada. We do have some friends. There's a great organization called Nanny Action Network. It's a very different model. They're in Toronto, so I don't know where you are in Canada, but we've got some friends who are doing some similar work in Canada.
There was an earlier question, I think from Amy, about a school requesting a support kit. Yes, so that can also be done on the website. There's a form to fill out. You can request a support kit and it can be mailed. We can also email it as a PDF.
I have a quick question. How do you know that if your child wants to be part of this group? How do you can't force them, but how do you know that they need help? What are the signs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So those are two questions, right? How do we know they need it versus how do we know they want it? So I would say, so like you asked about insurance. So again, it's not traditional therapy. We're not providing, a true support group. And so we have our enrollment form. I am meeting with families a lot to check in on their unique and individual family needs. And part of that is also recognizing if maybe a kid's needs are outside of our scope. So maybe like behaviorally learning wise, we are really inclusive and we'll always like pair kids with a one-on-one if we can. But we also wouldn't want to put a kid in a situation that's not appropriate if they maybe need individual support first. So in terms of like needing help, I think that can look a lot of different ways. I think the early diagnosis or early change in treatment, that can be a really good time to recognize that a kid is facing like new information or more changes. That can be a really good time to get involved. When a kid is asking, or maybe they're talking about, no one understands what I'm going through, right? My teammates don't get it. that can be a sign of like, wow, I actually know of an organization where everyone in the group kind of gets it, right? And so that can be a good segue to like, there's this community of kids who have similar experiences. That can be really helpful. But certainly, like I always recommend, if you're concerned about your child, maybe they're not sleeping well, or they're not eating well, or they're having a lot of like extreme emotions, behaviors, or loss of interest or pleasure in their activities or their schooling. Always, pediatrician, school counselor, great places to start just to make sure you're getting connected with the right resources and supports. And then certainly Pickles Group would be like a supplemental supportive community for their needs. And we have kids who are receiving, both levels of support. It's just that at Pickles Group, it's more of that community-based model. And then in terms of them wanting to be there, we do have kids that show up and are like, my mom made me come or whatever. We had a couple of those tonight. So totally natural and normal. And when I meet with a lot of parents, they'll ask questions like that. We are doing a lot of content as we're new. Cassie's been leading the charge on just kind of how we best meet caregivers and kids where they're at. And so we're trying to do more like parent, caregiver questions on the website, like how to respond to those questions your kids might be asking. We're trying to create some video footage around like what it's like to come to a Pickles meeting. Some of our founding Pickles kids, like Jeff's kids, are helping us with like how to talk to other kids about what it's like to join Pickles Group. So to kind of create that peer kids supporting kids, peer-based model. So we're working on all of that. But when kids show up, it's kind of like, give us a chance, right? And we've had a lot, our satisfaction rates are actually extremely high. And so we have a lot of kids leaving the program saying like, I love pickles, or their most reported response is actually, I had fun and I felt safe, or a sense of belonging. So it's kind of like, get them there, give it a chance. And I feel pretty confident in our facilitators and in what we've built that they will walk away with a really positive experience. And if they don't, it often may just be like a timing thing, or maybe like with the teens, sometimes they are prioritizing other activities, which is also age appropriate.
Totally. And we get a lot of feedback. We get a lot of feedback from parents that kiddos might be hesitant, like the same way, like I used to not want to go to volleyball practice, and then kiddos are leaving, and we're getting a lot of feedback, like there's a weight lifted off their shoulders. I can just tell that they feel lighter. One of our parents, the first time kiddos came, it was the first time their child proactively asked about their cancer diagnosis afterwards and used the word cancer, even though, mom and dad had talked about it with them before. So it really is a space, I think, where it's hard to predict what it'll feel like to be there. But once they're there, they're having a pretty transformative experience. Kelsey, we have a question from, it's Dana, I think. Is there a virtual group for older teens and young adults?
Yeah, so not a specific cohort for older teens and young adults. Our current age gap is 18. But we maybe there will be a future of young adults. I would say a lot of what I talked about tonight is applicable to young adults for sure. But in terms of our programming, it's first through 12th grade. So we kind of cap around 18. We also require that our volunteers are over 21 because we wouldn't want them to have like gone to school together or something like that. So to try to create some gap, and also just some of our liability requirements. But we do separate by age, and again, we are new, we're growing. So a lot of that just depends on our enrollment. So the more kids that we have enrolled, the more we can do age-based or development-based groups. And I would love to have those teens have their own space. We are trialing an experience here in the Chicagoland area where a high school is doing like their own kind of pop-out program. It's like a baby version of Pickles Group. And so we're testing different waters in terms of what works best for teens. It is a lower, I would say that's like that recruitment area that is a little bit lower. And I think that's for a lot of reasons. One, just like prioritizing other activities, being busy, but also just like reluctance and hesitation to tap into something that it seems very kid focused. And so we're working on that. Is the short answer is we're working on how to make it more engaging for teens. And I think having teens with teens is a priority for sure. So the more teens that come, the more we can do that, certainly. And our in-person program in the North Shore is a good example of that. We have 3 groups. We do like a little, middle, and an upper group. So there was also a question about how to speak with highly anxious tweens. So yeah, I would say like, feel like, oh gosh, if I talk about this scary or hard thing, it's going to increase anxiety. After like a decade in the hospital of like guiding parents and caregivers on preparing kids for like a surgery or a procedure, it can increase anxiety during that conversation and kind of that anticipatory anxiety. What we find is that it actually increases coping and reduces anxiety kind of following, right? And so, yes, talking about it can be extra hard. It can feel really scary. And what we often see is that kids were already like thinking about these things on their own, or Googling it or researching it, or trying to put the pieces together and maybe doing it with misinformation. So you can actually reduce anxiety by having those talks. But it's not uncommon to see the tears and see the reaction. I think Jeff has shared his own experiences with that, with his kids, of just like, kind of, you don't know how they're going to react, right? And sometimes it can be a big reaction, but what we see is it actually reduces reactivity over time. So it's more about those, again, those long-term effects. They're an anxious tween right now, but if I don't talk about this, who will they be as a teenager and who will they be as a young adult? And withholding information or not having open conversations can actually increase anxiety quite a bit. I think we can all relate to that as parents or even patients in a hospital room. If you're at the clinic and the doctors aren't talking about something, it usually makes you more nervous, right? And so being able to be kind of honest and direct can be really helpful.
This has been so wonderful. And does anybody else have any questions in their last few minutes as we wrap up? Thank you so much. This has been amazing. Anybody? And Brandy, I cannot believe you stayed up so late with us. It's so cool.
Amazing.
I'm jealous of your vacation.
And I want to thank Jeff for coming on and telling the story and how it got started. And we all admire what you're going through and how you're handling it. And what you started with Erica is amazing. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts for us. I put you on the spot, but
No, I appreciate you guys having us here, and I would encourage everybody, if you have kids and that would be eligible to kind of join the cohort, I would give it a shot. Our as Kelsey mentioned, the kids really love it, and they might come in questioning it, nervous, not sure, and then to be surrounded by these other kids who get them is always, it seems to always work. It seems to always, it's like 100% of the kids come out feeling good. It's not a cure, but it's always gone very well. So I'd encourage people to give it a shot and disseminate that information also.
Yes, thank you all.
The energy at the beginning of a group and at the end is like a very big contrast, and it always does feel a little awkward for caregivers for kids and even the facilitators at the beginning and by the end. And that was true of the Lovacek's experience when they first connected with the other kids. Like, it was more quiet at the beginning and then just like uproar of energy at the end.
Well, and Cassie had told us too, when Mark and I first met with her, that like sometimes the conversations are like, what's worrying you? My test, or I got a bad grade, or so and so. Like, it isn't just, as parents we think, oh, there's the weight of cancer, but that's why I think your tips too about speaking to children in your life at any age, it's so helpful, just the normalcy, and that was so great. So
yeah, I mean, they're just like other kids dealing with all of these things, right? School, friends, sports, etc. But then you do have that layer of cancer, and so it can exacerbate reactivity to natural things. And so being able to have these conversations and supports along the way can hopefully reduce reactivity and increase tolerance of like all different hard things. So for sure, yeah, they're kids supporting kids. They just have this thing in common. So.
So
thank you.
maybe I missed it, but so you do Zoom ones for kids? You have a Zoom group?
Yep, we do.
Okay.
We actually, we have a cohort. If you would like to jump on our fall cohort, our next kickoff date is next weekend. We had a group that started this weekend, and then our next fall date is next weekend. And we're happy to work with y'all if there's something that you want to get started in 2023, but for right now, the kickoff date is next weekend. So feel free, sign up your little humans. It's next weekend, October 2nd. And then after that, it's every other Sunday. So it's actually right around this time where we're working with them from 4 to 5:30 Central Time on Sunday afternoons is the timing. And if they've got to miss, that's okay. But it'll still be a really positive group. We have some awesome facilitators that Kelsey just trained. They are from the Erickson Institute in Chicago, which is they do child development, master's program, social work, child life. And our facilitators are incredible. So they're just a really fun group of folks who are very interested and are developing professional skills explicitly to support kids through tough stuff like this. So we hope to see some of y'all there.
If you're interested, the first step would just be filling out that youth enrollment form on our website. It would come to me. I'd reach out to you ASAP because we'd want to send you the welcome kit and get them all situated for this next Sunday meeting. I put the dates in the chat as well. And then we just require like a signed waiver. Sometimes I'll meet with caregivers if we need to address anything for your individual family needs. But for the most part, we'd want to just get that kit mailed to you, make sure you have the Zoom information. And then there's going to be this first kickoff meeting this Sunday, and then it'll be subsequent Sundays from then on. We had 7 to 8 kids tonight. So we'll merge the groups. So it'll be bigger on October 2nd, and then we can hopefully even split up by age if we're able.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. And yes, everybody, please put your email in the chat if you would like more information, or you can also go to the Pickles Group website, which I believe is also in the chat, to register or get more information or get on a mailing list. I know I signed up and the newsletters have been very helpful. So thank you all, Cassie, Kelsey, and Jeff, for coming. And we appreciate the work that you're constantly doing. So thank you. This has been awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We appreciate all
Thank
of you.
you.
And
This was
stay in touch.
the best. This was the best. I'm emailing you, Cassie.
Okay, amazing.
Feel free to unmute and
Brandy.
give out a thank you.
Yeah,
shout
thank
out.
you all.
Yeah.
Thank
This
you.
was great.
Thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
for
Here with
coming.
us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Take care. Enjoy your trip.
Thank you.